From Buffalo Toronto Public Media and WBFO, this is What's Next, Producer's Picks, highlights of conversations heard on previous episodes. On today's show...
But I do know that when you give a youth something they want, you are going to be more successful with giving them what they need if you couple those things together. So our intention is not to stop at sports. We want to couple this with music.
Mia Ayers-Goss, Executive Director of MVP, Most Valuable Parents. And we close out with...
You start breaking down the family structure. You got us. You got us. You've got the father, you've got the mother, you've got the children. So this is my passion. I get loud, I get verbose, I get angry, then I get sad. And then I have moments of happiness when people that I've been advocating for, finally, they've been given that you could go home.
Donna Robinson, the Buffalo Community Organizer for Release Aging People in Prison, or RAPP. I'm Thomas O'Neill White. Thanks for listening. First, we revisit my conversation with Mia Ayers-Goss of advocacy group MVP about combating crime and violence through diversion programs like a new basketball league. Well, let's talk about one of my favorite things.
Okay.
Basketball. Talk to us about the Neil Dobbins Intercity Basketball League, who had its championship game earlier this month.
Absolutely, and thanks so much for asking. And now basketball is one of my favorite things. It did not used to be, but now it is. So yes, we just had the championship game, and the two teams, Back to Basics, who was undefeated. They did not lose a game throughout the whole entire time. And ECRJC, which is Erie County Restorative Justice Coalition, those were the two teams. So just back up a little bit. We had 12 teams. So we had 12 sponsors. Sponsors like Say Yes Buffalo, the Urban League, Trade Fair, Food Market. So different people/organization businesses sponsored a team. And those 12 teams competed against one another to get to the semifinals and then to the championship. But in order for the young men to play in the game, they had to attend restorative circles or life skills workshops or like focus groups, deep conversations. They had to do something else other than just the basketball. The purpose was for us to build relationships with them and to give them soft skills and tools, things that they could use to stop them from wanting to commit crimes, to help them thrive in school, maybe get back in school, things like that.
So take me through like a day. Like, do they do these, like, say they have a game, would they do like a circle before or after? Or was that throughout the week?
Well, it's throughout the league. Okay,
throughout the league. This
was our first time. Okay, so I'm totally transparent and honest. This was our very first time doing this. Our intention was to have them do it every week. However, we had some difficulties with keeping coaches because, just being honest, is very difficult to find people to volunteer. That's one of the struggles that community organizations have, is to have volunteers. So we had difficulty with space, practice space for the youth. So when you have 12 teams and they all need to practice, they all have to have coaches there with them. We had to have facilitators for everyone, which we had everything on paper. We had everything in the beginning, but then unfortunately, sometimes people started to fall off. So they all had to attend at least once before the league was over. So they had to come to a focus group and a restorative circle and before the league was over. So we weren't able to do it every week, bottom line, but they all had to engage.
What do you think, taking a look at the league overall and the kids who participated, what do you think they got from the league?
So much. And I get emotional just thinking about it. These are youth that do not always have the support that they need. And it's not always the fault of the parent. It's not because, they have all these bad parents. You could have a mother and father that both have two jobs, or a mother that's going to school and working, and then the father has a job that's traveling. But then sometimes you do have parents that are, on drugs, or sometimes you have parents that are just not around. There are multiple different situations, but a lot of these youth just did not have the support and guidance. So having positive role models and having mentors that just told them, I'm here for you. I care about you. What do you need? And listening to them, it helped them to thrive. We had lots of instances where these kids were on probation. Some of them had dropped out of school and had not been in school for more than a year. And now by the end of the league, they were getting their GED. They had jobs. They were coming to us saying, Miss Mia, can you help me find a welding program? Or can you help me get back in school? So they went from slouching when we were talking to them and cursing every time they had to say something and not really having any goals to wanting to do something positive with their life.
So let's talk a little bit about Most Valuable Parents. For those who don't know, what type of organization is this?
So it's called Most Valuable Parents because our primary focus is parents. It started, the reason it started was to help parents to be more accountable, to help parents with support and resources so that they could be better parents and help the children to have better lives. However, we do now work with youth, and we work with other organizations. We do a lot of collaboration. So I would say we are a violence prevention group. We are a community service group with the primary focus of the parents. But we feel that getting to the root cause of the issues with families will help to reduce violence.
Is this what drew you to the organization?
Absolutely. So I have 5 children of my own, and I've always wanted to work with the community, but I was under the impression that I did not have enough time to be a community service person. I know now better, but my idea was once my youngest child went off to college, that I would want to do some community service. 2 weeks after my daughter went to college, I saw a Facebook post that Neil had put out. And I had worked with his wife in the past. So I said, okay, well, let me try this. And the rest is history.
And you worked closely with Neil Dobbins, who created Most Valuable Parents. But who was the late Neil Dobbins, for folks who may not know of him?
So Brother Neil Dobbins he'd worked with community work. He did community work for over 25 years. He started off because his son, Neil Jr., unfortunately was murdered. His sister was murdered. So he always had an interest in helping youth and helping the community. He was one of the founding members of Stop the Violence, that community organization. So he did a lot of work individually with youth, and he had taken groups of youngsters fishing, taken them to play basketball. So he did a lot of work with them. But one day, him and his wife was watching the news, and there was a story about a woman, Yvette, and her grandchild that got murdered. And when he saw that, it just kind of struck a chord in him, and he was like, you know what? We need to get to the parents. We need to get the parents and make them more accountable, help them to be more accountable. So he said, I'm going to put a Facebook post out, and I'm going to call a meeting, and I'm going to see if we can get 1,000 parents together. And, if we can just get them to work together, and we can provide resources and support and, give them what they need so that they can be more accountable to help their families. So he put the post out, and it was standing room only. The meeting, it was packed. People came from all over. So he did it the next week. He said, okay, I'll do it one more time. And it was packed again. So he said, you know what? I guess I'm in it for the long haul. So he got a logo, and then they got T-shirts, and they started to go door to door, and MVP was born.
And so you worked under him then?
Yes. I did not go to the very first meeting, but I was there at the second meeting. I started a week or two into MVP. So I was his deputy director. I started with him, like I said, about a week or two after he started MVP. And I'm just the kind of person that when I start something, I really get involved. So I just started just doing things that I know needed to be done. And he was like, you know what? You're my deputy director. So 3 months into MVP, he was like, you're going to be my deputy director. So I was his deputy director up until his unfortunate passing.
What kind of legacy has he left for you and for the organization?
Well, I can't say enough about his strength, about the impact that he had on not only the MVP members, but on our community. If you speak to anyone that knew him, elected officials, church members, people of the Islamic faith, in the school district, he was everywhere. So he left a legacy of creating synergy and solidarity in our community. And he left a legacy of us making sure that we continue to work with the family and build the family unit so that we can reduce violence. And not only did he have a passion for working with youth, but he also was really passionate about changing legislation and laws and fighting the gun traffickers and, the weak gun laws that some other states have. So he had a lot of passions, but I would say that's his legacy.
You mentioned synergy and solidarity and collaboration as well. What do those words mean to you?
Well, it means unity, basically. And the bottom line is we can do more together than we can do alone. So it's very important for MVP to bring folks together to make this happen, because violence is we always say it's like a multifaceted thing. It's a multi-headed beast, and it's going to take many different things in order for us to reduce the violence. So we can't do it alone. You can't just have a group that deals with mental illness. You can't just have the police. You can't just have the school system. You can't just have the doctors and the lawyers. Like, all of us together is what's going to change this.
Do you see that working more so, that type of synergy, than maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Well, I definitely can say that in the last 5 years, I see things changing. And I see in some areas, things are getting better. I can't really speak before I started to really do the community work because I wasn't as focused. But I can tell you that within the programming that we do and within the things that I see, absolutely, when you work together and you really care and you love and show commitment and consistency, I do see that it works.
I want to circle back to the basketball league and just, changing mindsets and the process behind using basketball or just using sports while incorporating that mindset change for our youth.
Well, I will say that
And you don't really know much about basketball.
I don't know. I didn't know really anything about basketball. Actually, in one of our games, the guy had taken the ball from the other guy, one guy on another team. And I said, wasn't that an interception? And the coaches looked at me like, Mia, that's football. So no, I don't know a lot about it. But I do know that when you give a youth something they want, you are going to be more successful with giving them what they need if you couple those things together. So our intention is not to stop at sports. We want to couple this with music. I've talked to many people. I think it's called Buffalo String Works, Dawn Berry with the Pappy Martin Foundation. I've spoken to them about coupling music. We've talked to Renato Graham and Rafael Suarez about coupling it with media production. We want to mix it with whatever the student or the youth is interested in. So we're starting with sports, but we're going to go into all different things. And if you combined trauma-informed care, restorative practice, love and compassion and support with whatever that youth wants,
Just
then
positive outlets.
yes, absolutely. You're going to get a better outcome.
And we obviously talked about some of the positives to come out of the league. What are some of the challenges with the league? It was your first year, so I guess there was
Yes.
a lot of trial and error there.
Yes, it was. And a lot of people have told me, because I've spoken about this a lot, and they're telling me, Mia, you talk too much, or you shouldn't say those things. You know, you always want to talk about the positive things. But I think it's important. I'm glad you asked me that, because it's important for us to talk about everything in order for us to get better. So the main challenge was practice space and coaches. So we had 12 teams. We should have had 24 coaches, to be real, because if
You need
one
a head
coach is
coach and
sick,
you need an assistant coach.
absolutely. And if one is sick or not able to come, and consistency is key with youth. You don't want to start off and not be able to finish. So not having enough coaches really hurt us. And I mean, we were successful, and I would say for it being our first time, it definitely was successful. But if we would have had coaches, the amount of coaches we needed from beginning to end, the success rate would have been even more. So having more coaches. So if there's any coaches out there, please contact us, joinmvp.org,
Yes.
www.joinmvp.org, or you can call us at 585-JOIN-MVP. And space, believe it or not, we could not find enough space for the youth to practice. They would call us consistently because they wanted to practice every day, although, you know, that's not realistic, but we just wanted them to be able to practice at least 3 times a week. And it was very difficult to find space for all the teams. And we have so many community centers, there's churches, there's all type of things. But it was difficult. Some people wanted to charge us too much money. Some people didn't have the coverage, like they didn't have someone to work there, to be there for the space. So that was a challenge. So if you have a basketball court and you're willing to offer space, or you know someone who's in charge of community space, then please help us.
There's been a lot of talk about the instances of violence in and after school. I know you do work with Erie County Restorative Justice Coalition.
Yes.
Friend of the show, Jessica Bauer Walker,
Yes.
all the things she's a part of. What do we do about this issue? It's a problem. I don't want to say it's an issue. It is a problem right now.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned those 2 wonderful ladies. I just would like to say that they have been an integral part of helping MVP become the success that we are. And we work very closely together with Dina Thompson and Jessica Bauer Walker. But what we do is continue to do what we are doing, and we need to work together, and people need to not be afraid to help. You know, I hear a lot, oh, what you're doing is great. And, you know, if I had time, I would do this. And if I could, I would. Well, we all can if we, you know, set certain priorities. And you don't have to be what we call boots on the ground. You can help for 2 hours a month. You can help from your home. Someone connecting someone, that helps. You know, someone making phone calls, someone posting on social media. It's not all the same, you know. So us working together is what's going to help programming. Our youth need more programming. They need something to do. Most of the time, they're doing these things because they don't have anything else to do. So having safe space for our youth is huge. Creating space for the parents and providing more support and resources for the parents. Anywhere you go where there is poverty, 90% of the time you're going to have crime. I don't care what color you are, what race you are, where you are. If there is poverty, people are going to do what they need to do to survive. Unfortunately, sometimes that means doing illegal things. So if we can provide more resources, more support, and more programming, I personally believe that would go a long way.
And let's talk a little more broadly about youth engagement. Is it harder to reach the youth than in generations past?
Well, I wouldn't say it's harder because we have social media. So if you get on social media, you can reach them, but really reach them the way you're saying, to really get to them. I don't think that it's difficult once you have the youth there in front of you, because when a youth knows that you care, it gets easier and easier. It's
but how
hard.
much? Pardon me. If does what they see through social media, does that play a part? Does it make it harder to? Because when I was a kid, there was no social media.
Absolutely, the music, the movies, the video games, the social media, it all impacts. However, in our experience, when we get these youth, when they're in front of us, as long as we are working with them consistently, not like a one-off, then it's not that difficult. I mean, it can be, but people need not think that it's a lost cause. It is a little difficult, but to answer your question, I think that social media hurts and it helps, but let's not be scared of it. Let's just go after it. If we had more involvement, it wouldn't be any more difficult. I mean, it is. I mean, you can say it's more difficult, but then you can say that it's less difficult. I mean, it depends on, how you look at it in your perspective. But the bottom line is we just need to work at tackling it. We need to work at fixing it.
Right. It's, you're making a sculpture out of marble as opposed to drawing a stick figure on a piece of paper.
That's a good way to put it.
You've got your background, 25 years experience in sales and management. How does that skill set you acquired in those fields apply to your work with MVP, a nonprofit whose aims don't necessarily line up with a traditional for-profit business?
Well, I will say, first of all, my experience in sales and marketing helps with going after funders. That definitely helps because, when you're in sales, it helps with dealing with people in general. I've been dealing with people all of my professional life. So when you're used to dealing with people, when I have to deal with parents or principals or whomever, it helps because I'm already used to dealing with people. So my professional life has helped me tremendously with being the executive director of MVP in many ways. But the main way is by relating to people. Because if you can't relate to people, it's a little difficult to, get them to want to work with you to help other people. If you can't relate to people, it's hard for them to listen to you, to believe you, to trust you. So it's helped me in those ways.
So would you consider yourself a people person?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, now do you think you were born like that, or did you have to kind of work at it?
I think I was born that way. I've always, my parents and my older aunts and uncles, they all told me that I talked too much, and they all told me that I, was always in everyone's business and I was always doing too much. So yeah, I think I've always been a people person.
Now, when you're around family now, and you're like, well, look at me now. How you like me now? Is that what you do?
Well, now I'm always asking family, could you come help? We need help. They're kind of tired of hearing about MVP probably, but they're happy.
You've got some things in the mix. Can you talk about your 10-step empowerment initiative for young women that you're working on? Well,
thank you so much. And it's going to start off targeting young women. However, it will be good for everyone. So it's called 10 Steps to Independence. And it's something that I personally have been working on for a very long time. I would say I started with this thought process maybe 10 years ago.
Wow.
However, it takes a lot to put something like this together because 10 Steps to Independence is basically a program that we would like to put out to help young people. And like I said, eventually it can help anyone, but it will help to build a foundation so that they are able to go off to college or they're able to go off to training or just go off to their life. But what it is 10 different skills, I would say, that or the steps each are different. So the first step is loving yourself and knowing yourself, okay? Because in our community, a lot of times we're taught you don't look right, you don't talk right, you don't act right. Mm-hmm. So if you're constantly told you're not enough, you're not correct, then it's difficult to love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, then how can you want more for yourself? And if you don't love yourself, how can you love someone else? So I think that was like really the most important thing, because in our work with youth, we can see that they really don't love themselves, because if you love yourself, you won't disrespect yourself the way that we see that our young people are doing. So the second step is health and wellness. So we want to teach our youth the basics in health and wellness, the basics in financial we call it financial health, but financial literacy, mm-hmm. basically. You know, we're not typically in the inner city, we haven't been brought up to learn about, you know, credit and interest rates and, you know, things that have to do with money and you know, really respecting your money and taking care of your money. Housekeeping, you know, it might sound weird, but, you know, when my daughter went off to college, she always complained about how her roommates didn't, you know, some of her roommates, you know, they didn't know how to clean up. And it's important to
we won't name names here.
It's important though, mm-hmm. for you to be able to cook, to clean, to take care of yourself. So learning how to fill out forms, you know, right. Sometimes these little things that people take for granted is important. You know, if a child does not know how to fill out a form, if they don't know that information, they're intimidated. So then they don't go apply for a job. You know, so a little thing leads into a big thing. So once they complete all of these steps, we feel that they will have a better foundation so that they are more that they have more self-esteem and they're more confident, and then they'll be able to go out and take care of themselves when they go out into the world. So it's 10 Steps to Independence. And the reason why it was so difficult is because I'm no expert in all these areas. So we have to get experts in all of these areas to make sure that we have the right information. And it's going to be a workshop in conjunction with a book. So there will be a physical book that will have all the steps that you can read on your own, but it will work in conjunction with a workshop. So there'll be a workshop with each step.
That was MVP's Executive Director, Mia Ayers-Goss. And we close today's show with Jay Moran speaking with Donna Robinson, Buffalo's community organizer for Release Aging People in Prison, or RAPP.
There are more than 31,000 people incarcerated in New York State prisons right now, the large majority of whom are Black and Latinx people. It costs New York between $120,000 to $240,000 annually to incarcerate one older person. Let's talk about what we know about what life is like for an older person in prison in New York State. Give us an idea of what they might be experiencing.
Oh, my goodness. Well, if you think about how the elderly survive outside, that's a cakewalk compared to what they experience in prison. First of all, medical treatment is slim to none. Most of the time it's none. During the pandemic, when people were being diagnosed with COVID, the only medication that they prescribed was water and Tylenol. And sometimes you didn't get either. Now I have friends, I call them, who are incarcerated, been there for 25, 30, 40 years.
How old are they now, maybe?
They're in their 60s, 70s. Okay. They've been there so long. You have to understand they're sleeping on a metal slab with a very thin mattress. The bodies have broken down. The shoes, they call them state boots. They give you a wardrobe when you come into the carceral system. The boots, they mess your feet up so that you won't even be able to wear regular shoes once you come home.
Oof.
The fact that you have to put in a call slip if you're having a medical emergency, and then wait for somebody to get back to you to let you know when you can be seen by a doctor, it can take months to years. And you think about the women, because we have 3 women's facilities in New York State. The care that they get, we are fighting now for something called the CARES, the CARES Act.
Okay.
And it was spearheaded by a former incarceree named Serena Ligori out of New Hour, Long Island. She's the executive director now. She came home from prison after serving decades, and now she started her own organization. Well, this bill is in alignment with the women's issues, especially the pregnant women. Because don't think that, if you're pregnant or if you get pregnant while you're in prison, that, that's a mechanism for release. No, you actually have your baby. And at Bedford Hills, they will let you keep your baby up to a year.
Okay.
So now you have to think about a woman's body, all the changes that it's going through. Proper care, proper treatment, proper nourishment. That's another thing. So this bill would be empowering the women who are having babies to not suffer in silence, the postpartum depression, which a lot of people who are on the outside have an issue dealing with. Just imagine it being exacerbated by being incarcerated.
So what kind of changes would be offered if this act were to be passed? What would be different for a woman who's in one of New York State's prisons?
Well, first and foremost, you would get better medical treatment.
That would be assured.
That would be assured.
Because then we can talk about this a little later on, that sometimes that care for other people who are incarcerated doesn't come in a timely fashion.
No, not
But in this particular case, this change would ensure that?
It would ensure that our pregnant women who come in there, they would be healthy. Their experience, even though their reason for being there is traumatic, they would be able to deal with that trauma, and it would not affect the baby. And then you've got to look at the part where, okay, you get to bond with your baby for a year, but then someone from your family, and if you don't have anybody, God forbid, an outside agency comes and takes your baby away. Now you've got to deal with that. Bonding, and now you're being stripped of your child.
And the child might end up in a foster situation, right? Which, of course, is a troubled system in its own right.
And then there's some women now that have adult children that, myself as an example, they have to leave their children with family members, sometimes elderly family members, sometimes distant relatives, whoever is willing to. So they become like foster children as well. And that's a whole nother genre right there when you're dealing with, I've had my mother for 30 years, 15 years, and now all of a sudden my mom is gone. The father, he's probably already been taken out of the household, and you left the mother there to take care of the children. Now the mother's gone. Who's raising our children? I know for a fact Siri nor Alexa can raise mine.
Right. Let's talk about your daughter. You brought her up, and she's at Bedford Hills, which is downstate, correct?
That's in Westchester County, the richest county in the 62 counties of New York State. And it's 2 women's facilities. Taconic is right across the street from Bedford. It's a medium facility. Bedford is the maximum, and the only maximum facility for women in the state of New York. And they are now accepting transgender citizens who are incarcerated that want to have these sex change operations. So they have transgenders and the women all housed together. How
long has your daughter been in Bedford Hills?
My daughter's sentence was 15 to life. She's been in 8 years.
And I want to give her Al-Sharifa as her name, but we call her Missy.
Yes, because she found that at the age of 5, nobody could pronounce or spell her name but her.
Right.
And my mother actually gave her that moniker when she was born because, yes, she was one who couldn't pronounce or spell, so Missy. And
Tell me about Missy. What's she like?
Oh, my goodness. My daughter's beautiful. She's hardworking. She's been working ever since she was 14. She went into the data entry program over at BBTC, East High School, where she started working after school in banks. Once she graduated, she got a full-time job working in the banking industry as a lockbox operator. Her last job at the bank was at HSBC, and they divested, as you know, around 2015, 2014. And since her incarceration, and she's been working in Bedford Hills. She's held several positions, and she works at those jobs just like she did when she was out here in the secular world.
Different pay scale, though.
The pay scale. Let's talk about it. There's an organization, 13th Forward. We're trying to pass the bill to end slavery because in the amendment it says that, in the 13th Amendment, it says that you will not be considered a slave unless you are a prisoner. So the wages that they pay for jobs, for the DMV, for example, is maybe 24, 25 cents an hour. But when that person is returned to society because of that scarlet letter of conviction, they cannot go and get a job paying $25 an hour that they were being paid 25 cents an hour to do. And my daughter's been, she works in the state shop. And that's like when you first come into the facility, you get your uniform, your bedding, your coat, etc. So she gets to see everyone who comes through the gates of Bedford Hills. Before she started doing that, she was the visiting room porter. Now, my daughter's 5'2", maybe 150 pounds now, but she's always been petite. And imagine stacking up tables and chairs and mopping a big visiting room floor, and then, for 24 cents an hour. And she says, Mom, you're giving me a raise. One of my jobs, I think it's 22 cents. But you get the gist of it.
Certainly.
It's modern-day slavery. And a prison is a warehouse for slaves. We're like black cotton inside. The amount of money that it costs to house individuals, if they would give them a fair salary, because they're taking our taxpayer money so that they can feed themselves, have money saved up so when they come home they have more than that $40 in bus ticket, so that they won't recidivate. Because this is one of the main reasons why people end up going back. They don't have a support system. So when they come home, they're hungry. Oh, I know people who are incarcerated because they stole a sandwich.
Speaking of food, you told me an interesting story, and I want you to share it. You have the opportunity to send Missy food. There are limitations,
of course,
and there's an expense involved. Let's talk about that.
Oh, my goodness. Well, before, people are still under the assumption that your family could bring over food, you put it in a box, and you send it to your loved one. Contraire, mon frère. As of August 2 years ago, they cut out us sending in our own packages. We have to get food from what they call vendors. These vendors consist of former law enforcement. You have to go through a process to be approved. And most times, people like yourself or myself, we will not be approved.
Why not?
Well, because we're citizens, and because we're not law enforcement, they think, we might smuggle bullets in a cantaloupe, because this was one of the scenarios. Somebody actually allegedly cut out an opening in a cantaloupe, stuffed it with bullets, and then put it back over. I've been buying groceries for a long time, and the shelf life of a cantaloupe is not that long. Once you cut it, it's going to start rotting. Right. And the first thing that came to my mind, and maybe there's something wrong with me, but I don't think so. What gun are they going to use these bullets in, and what cantaloupe did you put that gun in? So, they make up these stories, and then they run with it. And if we don't speak up, and even sometimes when we do speak up, they're like, what you say does not matter. We're going on what we have here. So now we have to order from different proprietors. I've tried maybe 4 or 5. I've tried Amazon. Amazon, as you know, when you get packages, they send 3 different packages. Well, the stipulations are you can receive 2, a possible 3 packages per month per individual, but they cannot weigh more than 40 pounds, and they have to be foods that are approved by the Department of Corruption.
Okay.
Yeah,
a little
I know.
editorial opinion. That's all right, though.
You thought I was going to say correction. They're not trying to correct anything.
Right.
This system was designed to work just the way they wanted it, and it is. They're locking us up exponentially, and it's not. I don't feel safer.
Right. And I want to make sure, because we can go a lot of different places with this, but I want to make sure we get this one point. You said there's a type of bread that you can send your daughter.
Yes. Pepperidge Farm, if you buy that bread, you notice that the inside, there's a bag inside.
Okay.
Well, it's the way that the bag is sealed, because a lot of breads, they have 2 bags.
Right.
But it's the way the bag is sealed that they will only let you buy this particular brand.
Okay.
And you go to the store, I buy Pepperidge Farm. For me, it's $3.69, less than $4 a loaf. But through these vendors, it can be as high as $7 or more for a loaf of bread. A head of cabbage, $5.99. The shipping and handling can be from $30 to $41. It costs me $400 a month to send less than 40 pounds of food to my daughter, and knowing the individual that she is, she's going to share her food with somebody that might not have anything. And it's an expense. And if it's not many of us can even afford to spend that much money for groceries for ourselves to survive. Now imagine you sustaining a whole family and then taking care of people who are incarcerated. And a lot of times there is more than one person in a family who's incarcerated. So now you have to make a choice. Which child are you going to feed this month? Are you going to eat? To me, that's inhumane.
Right.
Of course they can go to the mess hall. Oh, but the food in the mess hall, sometimes it comes in labeled not fit for human consumption. And when they do cook it, you really don't think that they're going to be using seasoned salt and lemon pepper. And no, you can find excrement from mice because rodents run rampant. You can find pieces of wood, what have you, in the food. And to me, mess, that doesn't sound like somewhere where I want to go and eat.
Right.
It's just me personally. So I try and sustain, not only my daughter, I try to sustain her, but if she reaches out to me and tells me that there's women there or any other citizens there that don't have anybody to care for them, she'll be like, Mommy, you don't have to do so much for me, but if you can help these people. And in the beginning when she went in, I did. And I was spending a lot of money, maxing out credit cards, Amazon account. They were getting ready to cancel that, just to try and help these people who had nobody else to care for. That's the type of human being my daughter is. Even when she was home, she would help people, and I wouldn't even know who she would help. It was after incarceration that people came to me and said, you know, she paid my mortgage, or she bought me food, or she sent me packages with toiletries and things like that. In her tenure working for the bank, she would always do the Jerry Lewis Telethon. She would do the corporate challenges she worked at M&T, Key Bank, Gold Dome before it became M&T back in the day. So that's the type of human being. And she's my bright light. We used to do stand-up comedy, a couple open mic nights. She's funny. And she said when she went to prison, she said, Mommy, you know, you're really funny. You should still keep telling jokes. And I'm like, you being incarcerated, I find that I don't have anything to laugh about. But in these 8 years, we laugh to keep from crying. That's what I say. I mean, things that you wouldn't think to be funny behind the wall, she tells me about them, and I actually have to crack up. So, you know, she's a wonderful human being, a great mother. The only thing she wants to do is come home, hold her grandbabies, and read to them. She didn't even care. She said, Mommy, if they gave me an ankle monitor and I could just come home and be home and eat your good cooking and play with my grandbabies, that would be it for her. But I'm working on her clemency now. She said that they sent her packet in. So like a lot of other clemency applications, they're sitting on the desk. Kathy Hochul, she's got the power. When I tell you, she can pick up a pen and sign any one of those applications and give somebody their life back.
When it comes to that clemency application, what does it say? What does it say about your daughter that says this is why she should receive clemency?
This was a year to compile this document. So the application is not like you're going to renew your driver's license or apply for the apartment. This is consisting of letters of support, people from the community that know her, that have a reentry plan, housing, where you're going to live, letters of support from her family, my mother, who's still alive. And yes, believe it or don't. Hi, Mom. I always wanted to say that. She's 86 years blessed. And she's waiting. I don't know how much longer she says she can hold on, but she's waiting for one of her favorite grandchildren to return to her. There's a video in there where she actually gets to speak and tell why it's imperative for her to come home. She's gotten an associate's degree last May.
She got it while in Bedford Hills? Wow.
They have a program with Marymount College at Bedford where they send in the information. It takes a little bit longer. It's a process, but at least you're using your time wisely. And this was something she couldn't do when she was home. She worked. She worked from the age of 14, so college was not an option. She had a salary. When I couldn't take care of myself, she took care of me, her siblings. So now she's getting an education, but her health is failing. At 48 years old, before she went in, she had a stroke. So she had angioplasty, surgery. She's had a heart murmur. And now she's having female problems she's been dealing with for 2 years. And this is where I say the CARES Act and talking about health care for women. She has a period that lasts 2 or 3 months, so much so that they had to take her out to a hospital for a blood transfusion, only to bring her back. And then her period started again. So now they're taking her in and out, MRIs, testing. This has been going on for a year, over a year. So her body is breaking down from a woman who used to be able to go to the balls for the Masons and wear the stilettos. She can barely walk in the state shoes. Her back and her spine is breaking down from lying on that slab of metal, doing that hard work. And I tell her, that prison has been there, was there before you came. It's going to be there long after you've left. You cannot get up all the dirt, all the marks. You can't clean up the ilk that's in the walls, the women who have died there, the woman from Buffalo, our citizen from Buffalo who died at Bedford Hills.
Who was that?
Her name was Darlene Lulu. They called her Benson Say. She comes from a large family here in Buffalo. The family was impacted ever since their parents were killed. Her mother was killed. And Lulu wouldn't hurt anybody. You would see her in the community, in the park, whatever. But she was convicted of a crime, and she served time in Bedford Hills. We were fighting for Lulu to come home. She was the first woman to die of COVID.
Oh.
They took her out because she had heart surgery. From what I understand, they sent her back right after the surgery. She contracted COVID. The individuals who were there with her, they tried to nurse her because, as I said, Tylenol and water was all they gave. They tried to nurse her back to health, but to no avail. It was too late, and she died in Bedford Hills. The woman who died in Bedford Hills, Valerie Gator, She was the impetus for me joining
Right,
the
yeah,
organization.
that's right. We haven't talked about. Let me just reset, just so everyone knows that this is Donna Robinson with me from the Release Aging People in Prison campaign. She's the Buffalo community organizer. Yeah, let's talk about Ms. Gator because, like you said, this was the reason why you got involved in this in the first place. Give me her story, please.
Ooh, Miss Val. That's what everybody
Miss
called
Val.
her.
Okay.
Her name was Valerie Gator. She had been in Bedford Hills ever since she was 19 years old. Miss Val passed away in Bedford Hills at the age of 61. Her sentence was 50 to life. She wouldn't have been eligible for parole until she had served 50 years. She'd only served 41. She had to wait 9 more. Every individual that came into Bedford Hills, she mentored them. She was there as long as one of the superintendents. Everybody was wondering, when are you going to go home? She was in every program, numerous jobs. The one particular job she held was the click or the photographer. This is when my daughter, Missy, met her. She took her under the wing. She could tell that, you're not really familiar with this life. So this is what you're going to have to do in order to survive and make it out. She taught her how to take pictures. My daughter became the click then. Miss Val couldn't speak at times. She said her throat was bothering her. They put her on a diet of soft food and told her she had GERDs or acid reflux. Well, I have that too. I take some baking soda water if I can't get Prilosec or what have you. Burp, whatever, going about your business. But no. Miss Val was now taking care of puppies for veterans, raising puppies and things. And they got her the special diet while she was there. And she was like, I'm not feeling good, I can't talk. This is really hurting. They took her out. 2 weeks later, on a particular August 13th, I was visiting my daughter. And I'd been asking where Miss Val was. My daughter's like, they say she's sick. I haven't seen her in a while. I heard the officers talking on my way out and asking what was all the commotion that happened the day before. And one of them, they're mostly from downstate, so he said Gator died. And I'm like, oh, Lord, don't let him be saying Gator with that New York City accent. Before I could get to the train to get back to New York City, my daughter was calling, crying on the phone that Miss Val had passed away. I was on my way back to Buffalo. No sooner than I got back to Buffalo, they called and asked me if I would come to New York City and speak in front of the governor's office on Miss Val's behalf, because these bills that we're advocating for would have helped her. Fair and timely parole, elder parole. She would have had a chance at a fair parole hearing before she died of what was the coroner's report saying it was esophageal cancer. Not GERDs, not acid reflux, but cancer of the esophagus. This woman had suffered for over 2 years with that. And if she had proper medical treatment, could have been caught. But it's just the inhumanity of it.
So she suffered before she died.
She suffered, she suffered her whole life, even up to the commission of this crime. It was pretty heinous. You had to be under the influence of some pretty psychotropic drugs at the time, which she was. 360 degrees when I met her, the most sweetest, kindest person. And I would ask, what can I do for you? I would think that she would say, get me out of here. No. She asked for something as simple as a pineapple soda out of the vending machine. A pair of sunglasses like I got my daughter, So this was the jump off. I'd been dibbling and dabbling in criminal injustice because I'm no stranger. My grandmother had a son. I was doing prison visits at the age of 5 in a state penitentiary. My brothers, my children, and grandchildren. So this has been throughout generations, but it hit me when it became my daughter, because inherently we don't think about women being incarcerated.
Right.
You think about somebody incarcerated. You think of a big man wearing a black and white striped outfit. You don't think about a woman. And there are women as old as my mother who are in Bedford Hills, and I see them. And knowing if they came home, what could you do? What would you do? And then you got to look at the other side. Everybody is not guilty. Some signed a confession. Some were accomplices. I am an advocate with some of the most... I wouldn't trade these people for all the tea in China, I say. Laura Whitethorn, she's on the board of directors of RAPP, Release Aging People in Prison. My executive director, Jose Saldana, formerly incarcerated, member of the Young Lords. Decades he spent. Now he's the head of an organization reaching back to save the people he left behind, because he knows there's a lot of good people who've been ready and should be returned to their family. It's about family reunification. The family, you start breaking down the family structure, you got us. You got us. You've got the father, you've got the mother, you've got the children. So this is my passion. I get loud, I get verbose, I get angry, and then I get sad. And then I have moments of happiness when people that I've been advocating for, fighting, finally, they've been given that you can go home. You get that letter saying you can go home. A lot of them say they don't know how to react, because there's always a propensity for something to happen before the day comes when they can walk out that cell.
And that will do it for Producers Picks. We would like to thank our guests, Mia Ayers-Goss and Donna Robinson. If you missed anything or you'd like to hear it again, you can get this program as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts or on the Amplify BTPM app. Each episode is also online at WBFO.org. I'm Thomas O'Neill White. Thanks for listening.
This is the Buffalo-Toronto Public Media History Bite, bringing you a peek into significant historical events for the week of April 1st to April 7th. I'm your host, Abby Mylock. Theater owner Michael Shea was born on April 1st, 1859. In 1900, he created the beginning of a vaudeville theater, which had eventually expanded and moved around to what we now know today as Shea's 710 Theater in Buffalo. On Thursday, April 4th, 1946, Erie Community College, or what was originally known as the New York State Institute for Applied Arts and Sciences, was established. On April 6th, 1917, the United States had officially entered World War I. On this day, history was made when the United States decided to enter the war after 2.5 years of the war beginning in Europe. You've been listening to the Buffalo-Toronto Public Media History Bite. Discover more stories about Western New York's past on the Buffalo History Museum's website. Learn more at buffalohistory.org. For Buffalo-Toronto Public Media, I'm Abby Mylock.